Every parent loves to see their child happy as their playful, rambunctious self. When they're healthy, that's all possible. With appointments available at Seattle Children's, your child can get the compassionate care you expect when they need it. So if your child needs specialty care, make an appointment today, because safe, timely care can make all the difference. Hope, care, cure. Seattle Children's.
Parents and grandparents hear it time and time again. Enjoy every minute because it goes by so quickly. With their first steps, they start imagining, exploring, and dreaming of what's next. You can help put those dreams in motion by saving for college with Washington's 529 plans. The GET program and the Dream Ahead College Investment Plan can help them be ready for wherever their dreams take them. Give the gift of a brighter future today at wastate529.wa.gov.
Every parent loves to see their child happy as their playful, rambunctious self. When they're healthy, that's all possible. With appointments available at Seattle Children's, your child can get the compassionate care you expect when they need it. So if your child needs specialty care, make an appointment today, because safe, timely care can make all the difference. Hope, care, cure. Seattle Children's.
Parents and grandparents hear it time and time again. Enjoy every minute because it goes by so quickly. With their first steps, they start imagining, exploring, and dreaming of what's next. You can help put those dreams in motion by saving for college with Washington's 529 plans. The GET program and the Dream Ahead College Investment Plan can help them be ready for wherever their dreams take them. Give the gift of a brighter future today at wastate529.wa.gov.
Every parent loves to see their child happy as their playful, rambunctious self. When they're healthy, that's all possible. With appointments available at Seattle Children's, your child can get the compassionate care you expect when they need it. So if your child needs specialty care, make an appointment today, because safe, timely care can make all the difference. Hope, care, cure. Seattle Children's.
Parents and grandparents hear it time and time again. Enjoy every minute because it goes by so quickly. With their first steps, they start imagining, exploring, and dreaming of what's next. You can help put those dreams in motion by saving for college with Washington's 529 plans. The GET program and the Dream Ahead College Investment Plan can help them be ready for wherever their dreams take them. Give the gift of a brighter future today at wastate529.wa.gov.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today we have a ParentEd talk of New Year, New Health Habits with Pacific Medical Centers featuring Dr. Chen-Milhone and Christy Goff. Dr. Chen-Milhone is a pediatrician and internal medicine physician at PacMed Totem Lake. Dr. Chen-Milhone received her medical education at West Virginia School of Osteopathic Medicine in Lewisburg, West Virginia. She completed her residencies at the University of Illinois College of Medicine. Her medicine interests include newborn care, breastfeeding medicine, preventative medicine, well child care, weight management, chronic medical conditions, and mental health. And Christy Goff is a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and yoga instructor at Pacific Medical Centers. She graduated with a master's degree from Bastyr University and has worked in various settings, including as a clinical dietitian, as a dietitian with the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, and the SNAP-Ed program. Christy is frequently featured in media interviews by Q13 Fox and King 5. She produces original cooking videos and is a regular representative on PacMed social media pages. Additionally, she is a past president and current board member of the Greater Seattle Dietetic Association. We're so glad to have you both join us today. Thank you. My name is Brenna McCown. I'm ParentMap's events manager. For those of you not familiar with ParentMap, we proudly publish free print magazines. We've published several parenting books, and we host an award-winning website. Check out ParentMap.com. We also produce dozens of live and now virtual events. Before I begin, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. Today's webinar is being recorded and may be republished for educational promotional usage. We also will email everyone a link to the recording afterwards. And we invite you to submit your questions for our speakers today through the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Also, we couldn't do this without you, so thank you for zooming in and joining us today. Thank you as well. Huge thank you to our sponsors, our ParentMap Live presenting sponsor, Seattle Children's Hospital. Thank you to our ParentMap Live Gold sponsors, Pacific Medical Centers, PacMed, the Jewish Day School, and also to our event sponsor today, Washington College Savings Plan, WA529. At this point of time, let's go ahead and turn everything over and we'll get started.
Alrighty, well, welcome everybody. My name, like Brianna just said, my name is Christy Goff. I'm going to kick us off today with our presentation on New Year, New Habits. So we decided on this topic because there's a lot of nutrition myths out there and really important things to consider around health. So we'll go over those, and again, feel free to ask questions throughout, and we'll get to those at the end of the presentation. So a lot of us come into January with that big need to change, either with our weight or feeling that need to reset. And while some of this can definitely come from a place of compassion and really needing to change, a lot of it that I see comes from this place of dislike about our bodies, a lot of shame and guilt for what we've done in the holiday season and whatnot. So one myth that I'm starting with today is, do you need to go on a cleanse or fad diet to lose weight and reset yourself? Well, the big easy answer is probably no. We know that a lot of these fad diets and cleanses are not super healthy for us, and they're based on this kind of restriction and self-hate and guilt that we're doing something wrong. And we also know that researchers have estimated that 45 million Americans set out on a diet each year, but only about 5% of those 45 million end up keeping the weight off. So there's something that isn't working. And I put a little diagram on the bottom of your screen to really just exemplify what's happening in a diet. Anytime we're restricting our calorie needs, our body jumps into gear and says, no, I don't want to starve. So there's a couple of things happening on our biology. We see a decrease in our leptin. This is a hormone that guides our fullness cues, so tells us to stop eating. So we actually see a decrease in that. We, in turn, see an increase in ghrelin, our appetite hormone. So this is telling us to eat. And we see that food tastes better when we're in this starvation mode or restriction mode. So not only do we feel hungry and we can't stop when we feel full, but we also think that food tastes good. So there's all of these biological mechanisms that are there to prevent us from losing drastic weight, which is exactly opposite of what a cleanse or a fad diet is meaning to do. So I thought I'd share this morning a couple ways that we can improve our health without diets. This is from kind of a concept from Health at Every Size or mindful eating, if you've heard of these. And it's a great thing to do and think about for your kids as well. Weight is an outcome to a lot of different things in our life. So it's not only what we're eating, but it's our genetics. It's about how much sleep we're getting, how much stress we're experiencing. So I always think of it as like a symptom to some of the things that we're doing, not necessarily something that we need to drive to change all the time. So first on the list is valuing nutrition for its own sake. There's a lot of disordered eating out there, right? Like this guilt around eating certain foods, and we want to come to a place where we feel satisfied in eating, and that alone can be very healthy for someone's mental health. So finding that, yes, there's some foods that are very helpful for ourselves to continue eating, like our vegetables and our fiber. They make us feel full. They make us feel good about our digestion. But we also want to not be obsessed about it, right? So we don't want to have to think about our nutrients and what we're getting every single day. Secondly, we'll talk more about this later, but moving our body more often. Exercise is a tool for weight loss. It's not just something that keeps weight managed. It can also help relieve stress, increase our feel-good hormones. It helps with our focus and concentration, especially in children, and it helps to manage our blood pressure, cholesterol, and diabetes if we're dealing with some of those ailments. So I always think of exercise as a way to feel good about the body rather than more of a punishment. I know some people go into it like that. Third is don't treat sleep as an afterthought. I did mention that a little bit, but weight loss is extremely difficult if people are not sleeping enough. So essentially, we see 1 week of mild sleep restriction increases levels of inflammation in the body, impairs brain function, especially around focus and concentration, which we just mentioned was a benefit to exercise. So again, I have clients that really want to get healthy and manage some of their disease states or lose weight. And if they're not sleeping, we can't really do much about that. So that's usually my first area to go in addition to stress. This fourth one is about inventorying your coping toolbox. So a lot of us turn to food for comfort and emotion. I know a lot of you may be dealing with that with the pandemic. So know that we have these coping mechanisms because it does increase our feel-good hormones when we eat sugary food, for example. However, is this what we're doing all the time with our food? So just kind of exploring that. You can even work with a dietitian or therapist on this one, but knowing that there's a lot of different other ways that we can cope with some of the stressors in our life. And then the last one is don't defer preventative health care. So a lot of times people are so focused on the weight that they forget to do some of the other things that are really important, like going to your wellness check every year, finding out what your cholesterol levels are, even testing your vitamin D. I always advocate for my doctor to test mine because in the state of Washington, we typically see a lot lower levels. So again, 5 ways that we can improve our health without diets, kind of going against the general trend in January and February to lose weight and to restrict and feel guilty about it. So again, any questions, you can put those in the chat bar. The second myth I had is I have to be vegan to reap the benefits of a plant-based diet. So there's a lot of hype right now around what plant-based actually means. And it doesn't mean that you have to be vegan or even vegetarian to get some of the benefits of eating more plants. And when I say plants, I not only mean vegetables, but I also mean whole grains, beans, nuts and seeds, all these things that are not essentially from an animal product. We find some really good benefits from eating in this manner. So you don't have to cut out all of your meat to still incorporate more plants. But we see a reduction in blood pressure. We see a reduction in diabetes risk. We find that it's actually cheaper for your family to purchase more of these plant-based proteins than it is sometimes to do the meat-based. So again, shopping smart is probably an option here because produce can be expensive, but sometimes you can mix and pair canned and frozen and still get the benefits of those plants. So one of the best diets that I recommend or eating plans is the Mediterranean eating plan. It's one of the most studied diets and one of the most diets that come up over and over again for accessibility and ease. So it's flexible. It allows you to eat a lot of different things. It doesn't necessarily restrict much, but it really emphasizes the plants. And you can see from both diagrams here that half of our plate or the majority of the food that we're going to be eating is from a plant, either with whole grains, lettuce, tomatoes, cucumbers. And then you'll see that salmon is a big part of the Mediterranean. They tend to eat a lot of fish in these areas of the countries around the Mediterranean Sea. If you turn your attention over to the right side of the screen, you'll even see they've added an exercise component, water, and then wine. So there's some good research that moderate intake of alcohol can be helpful as well. We don't want to go over that 1 glass a day for women and over 2 glasses a day or beers or some kind of alcohol content for men. So know that that moderation is definitely included into this Mediterranean diet. Some of the research that comes up around Mediterranean eating plans is that it shows positive results for lowering the risk of heart disease, Parkinson's disease, cancer, and Alzheimer's. So that's a lot of different ailments that all stem from this general inflammatory process in the body. We really focus on the omega-3 fatty acids that we're getting from the fish and the seafood that is so prevalent in this area of the world. And those omega-3s are said to lower systemic inflammation in the body. Getting it 2 or 3 times a week is an awesome goal, and potentially even supplementing if you aren't a huge fish source or if it's just not sustainable for you to keep buying fish all the time. When we also look at the Mediterranean diet, we see that those great benefits for the mind, for preventing Alzheimer's and dementia. And that's likely attributed to all of the antioxidants and phytochemicals in plant foods. So not only are you getting your vitamins that you might get in a pill for some of us, but you're also getting these other components that have such a powerful effect on the body. So really cool diet to check out, and it's always ranked, the last couple years it's been ranked #1 on US diet reports. All right, our last myth, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Milhone, is my family can never eat sugar in order to be healthy. I get a lot of questions around sugar. And first, yes, we can eat too much sugar, but all sugar is not banned from your plate. So being okay with that balance of adding some natural sugars, which are from that whole food, not adulterated, and then mixing in some of these added sugars that we find more of a health risk for. So some of the things that have been linked to eating too much sugar is obesity, so weight gain, diabetes, blood pressure even. And we know that a lot of Americans are eating up to 22 teaspoons of added sugar a day. So if you actually picture 22 sugar cubes in one glass, that's just the average of what people are consuming each day. It's about 88 grams of sugar. We want to get you down to about 6 to 9 teaspoons or sugar cubes a day. So you can see that there's now some recommendations around added sugar. And for kids, we want even less. So I know that's a really hard population to convince not to eat so much added sugar, especially when they have access to sodas and juices and a lot of these things that are more pure sugar. But we really want to strive for that. And I have an extra little slide on here of 3 or 5 ways you can reduce sugar cravings. You can try this on yourself. Maybe they'll work for kids as well. And they're called the 5 Ds. So first, delay, trying to wait at least 10 minutes before consuming a dessert or something after dinner. You can also focus on something else. So have some kind of distraction. That can be really handy because once our mind kicks into gear that we want sugar, we're actually driven by a hormone called dopamine to go eat that. So it's really important to just know that it is a biological mechanism of sugar cravings. So distracting and delaying are just kind of temporary responses to make you not think about it anymore. Avoid keeping those things that you crave in your house. So if you are like, oh, I can't help myself around chips or ice cream, maybe trying to keep those for special occasions when you go out to eat or when you have a treat on the weekends, but not having them in your house every single day. Keeping fruit in front of you as well can help drive your cravings towards the naturally sweet foods as opposed to things like cookies and cakes and that sort of thing. Then you want to determine how strong your craving is, right? Is there something else that can satisfy that craving, or do you really just want that chocolate chip cookie? Maybe it's a drive to the store to actually get it because that drive is so strong. And that's when you can decide how much you want to eat. If you want to try just doing half of a serving to see if you really enjoy it and get that craving taken care of. Or maybe you eat the whole thing, but you really savor it and you do it mindfully and slowly and not with guilt or shame, just kind of enjoying what is at that moment. Because sometimes we just need to eat what we're craving. But I hope these kind of help to think about, and you can try them with some of your picky children as well. Just trying not to have as much stuff in the house. It's a little challenging with those little ones, I'm sure. One resource that I wanted to point out, we won't go over too much today, is Ellen Sater's Division of Responsibility. So if you do have some picky eaters or you find that they're only wanting sugary things or fried things or salty things, she has some really good strategies to manage that as well as some case studies. So it's www.ellensaterinstitute.org. A lot of good resources. I definitely encourage you to check that out if you're struggling with eating time and it's a very stressful experience in your house. All right, turning it over to Dr. Milhone.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Christina Chen-Milhone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about sleep. As Christy kind of alluded to earlier, it should be part of your everyday health habits. So next slide, please. So why is sleep so important? So it's a pretty fundamental part of our nature. Sleep allows us to restore, helps us fight diseases,
Just one moment. Apologies for the technical difficulty here. I think Christy had a couple more things, so I think we'll proceed with Christy and then see if we can get Dr. Milhone back on here.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks, Christy.
All right, so our next piece is the exercise section. And I know from my clients that I've been seeing, exercise has been a real challenge in the pandemic, especially when you're juggling working and this new kind of routines that we're getting ourselves in. But like I said at the beginning, exercise is really like a magic pill. You're gonna see a really big increase in focus and concentration. We see a decrease in anxiety and depression with exercise. We also see we literally can like exercise out our stress when we feel like everything is too much. We see an increase in our sleep, which is amazing because that's going to help our stress level and our ability to get healthy. We also see an increase in our immune function, and everyone's kind of looking for that magic thing to boost your immune system. So even if you can just get a little bit throughout the day, our goal is to break up our sitting, just getting out of our chair, doing some stretches. I did some jumping jacks in my office earlier. It was kind of strange, but kind of fun. So get that heart rate up. And same thing goes with kids too. I know maybe there's been more sitting in the families now with the pandemic, but making sure we can get some kind of regularly scheduled activity for them to meet some of their needs as far as exercise goes. So most of the kids in there from elementary schools up is about 60 minutes a day. Lower than that, they have a lot more energy. So we want 30 minutes up to 3 hours for some of the toddlers and preschoolers. And that doesn't have to be on a treadmill, right? That can be running around the house. That can be doing some dancing with YouTube videos. That could be anything that gets them moving. For adults, the Center for Disease Control recommends about 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity. So you can still talk, or you're just feeling a little bit of an increased heart rate with moderate aerobic. And then if you're doing vigorous, which is like you can't breathe, you can't talk, like a running or something more strenuous, they say that you can even get less amount of minutes. So if that's motivating for you, some of us out there might rather do more vigorous exercise to get it over with. And we don't want to forget our muscle strengthening activities. That's going to be helpful for our bone health and also our metabolism. So if we have been on a lot of diets in the past, a lot of people struggle with a slower metabolism, and building lean body mass can be helpful for that. So you're burning more calories at rest, essentially. Some ideas to get you back into exercising if you've kind of fallen off the wagon or just feeling like you don't have an outlet anymore, if your gym is closed or your group exercises are postponed. So here are just some fun ones. I've been enjoying driving to new neighborhoods and just walking around and seeing what's nearby. There's so much different houses and different landscapes and different playgrounds. So trying to find ways to keep yourself engaged and maybe having that time be outdoors when it's not so rainy. Riding bikes is great for children. You can run along or walk along with them. Doing some kind of virtual classes on YouTube, or if your gym has some kind of virtual component, definitely take advantage of that. I even find that my nieces love to do ballet classes on YouTube, so that could be kind of fun to just search out different interests that they might be excited around. And then I put at the bottom here a little motivation, even during the workday. Even if you move for 3 minutes every hour, that's about 24 minutes of activity. Now we don't get the extreme benefits of the focus and the concentration until about 7 minutes of exercise, but still you can get your Fitbit up there with that 3 minutes every 60 minutes. Do we have our Dr. Chen-Milhone back?
Yes, I'm back.
I'm
so sorry about that. Thank you, Christy. Sorry about that, everyone. My internet had cut out. Okay, so back to sleep. So conversely, like we talked about how it's, important part of wellness, helping with our immune system and work performance, school performance. So conversely, studies have shown that if we don't have enough sleep, then we're more likely to make mistakes at work. We're more likely to be in motor vehicle accidents and other injuries. Studies have also shown that it increases medical conditions, so like obesity, depression, high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and headaches. So also, not having enough sleep can cause decreased melatonin production. Now, melatonin is a hormone that our body secretes at night, particularly during our sleep cycles. It's secreted by that tiny little gland that you see in that photo to the right. What it does is it helps regulate our sleep cycle and it helps promote sleep. So our melatonin is definitely very important in part of our sleep. Next slide. All right. So how much sleep do we need? So as we all know, kids need the most sleep. Newborns need about 14 to 17 hours a day. Infants 4 to 12 months need 12 to 16. 1 to 2 years old need 11 to 14. And it gets less than that, less as you see based on this chart as they grow. If you notice, many of you who are parents and have kids, you notice that when kids are going through their growth spurts, they'll tend to sleep more. When they're sick, they'll tend to sleep more. So our bodies are telling them that they need to get that rest. So as adults, we'll need at least 7 hours of sleep, and that's kind of been shown to give us the most optimal health. Next slide. So what do we do about getting the appropriate amount of sleep? So make it a family priority. Make it one of the most important things that you guys do together as a whole family, just like exercise and healthy eating. As parents, this is particularly important because if we are able to establish healthy sleep habits with our children, they'll be able to take it with them into adulthood. So next slide. So keeping a regular routine is also very important. Kids thrive on routines and they tend to do better with that. So for instance, a lot of families do the brush, book, bed. So I have a 2.5-year-old and a 7-month-old, and we do routines every single day. So with our 2.5-year-old, what we do every night is we do bath time first, then he brushes his teeth, and then we read some stories, and then he goes to bed. And this works really well. We had a power outage, I'm sure a lot of us did about a month ago, and we had to stay at a hotel. So having this routine was really helpful in making sure, even though it's a different environment, he still got the sleep that he needed, and we did too, because he was able to sleep well. And now for us as adults, it's important for us to also sleep at the same time every day and wake at the same time every day. This helps us with our sleep cycles. It helps with the melatonin production as well. And yes, that does mean weekends and vacations too. So you want to avoid overscheduling as well. Nowadays, with all the sports activities and music lessons and things that our kids have, sometimes it's hard to find downtime, but that part is also important. So make sure you schedule a little bit of time every day just to wind down before bed, just to get your body to get to relax before it's time to sleep. Next. So you want to make sure your bedroom is a sleep supportive environment. So only use it for sleep or sex. Make sure you dim the lights, make sure it's very quiet. This is very important just overall to kind of help keep the melatonin production going as well. I've had some parents ask, is it okay to read in bed before sleep? That's usually okay as long as, that reading isn't too mentally stimulating. As long as it helps relax you and go to bed, that's okay. And that's also part of the reason why for kids, we sometimes read books before bed. Next. So again, the mental stimulation you want to try to avoid in the screen time, which I'll talk a little bit about 1 hour before bed. So 1 hour before bed, no mental stimulation, no screen time. Next, no caffeine after midday as well. You want to avoid alcohol at night too. Alcohol may make you feel a little sleepy, but the downside is that it can wake you up in the middle of the night. So we usually recommend no alcohol at night. You want to also exercise 30 minutes a day, kind of like what Christy had talked about, but you want to make sure you don't exercise 2 hours before bed because you want your body to relax before you go to sleep. And finally, if you can't sleep within 20 minutes, I would recommend getting up and get out of bed. Next. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about screen time here. So screen time is basically the amount of time that we're on our smartphones, computers, laptops, tablets, TVs, and video games. Now, with all the technological advances over the recent decades, it's pretty much unavoidable to avoid screens. They're everywhere we go. They're in our cars and stores, airports. A lot of our jobs require phones, computers, on a regular basis. And particularly in the COVID area, I know a lot of schools are doing virtual, so it is difficult to avoid screen time as well. And screens are, they're helpful. So there are benefits to media. It helps, keep in touch with family and friends. It helps us, learn about what's going on in the world. And it also helps us, work and collaborate with, our colleagues, and for kids to collaborate with their classmates. So how much screen time are we actually getting? So if you look at this chart, so the middle column is amount of screen time in hours per day, and it's broken up into different age ranges. So you'll see that as kids get older, they're getting more and more screen time every day. And this doesn't even include this amount of screen time that they get in school or, for homework and things like that. So interesting facts. So 17% of kids less than 1 year old spend 1 hour a day on TV. 25% of kids 1 to 2 years old spend 3 hours of TV a day. 92% of 1 year olds already have some sort of mobile device, and even as young as 4 months old. And by the time, kids are 11 years old, at least half of them already have a smartphone, and about 3/4 of teenagers have a smartphone. So that's a lot of screen time and a lot of exposure. And one report actually said that 25% of teens feel like they're constantly connected. So again, lots and lots of screen time there. And for adults, you'll see that greater than 18 years, we get about 11 hours screen time a day, and that does include work-related screen time as well. So what's the harm? So Christy kind of alluded to this a little earlier, and obesity is the biggest risk factor. So when we see some studies over the last several years, we've seen that in teenagers, there's a 5-time risk of being overweight if you watch 5 hours of TV. For children 4 to 9 years old, watching TV 1.5 hours a day increases the risk of obesity. And for 2-year-olds, BMI increases about every hour per week that media is consumed. So that's pretty high, and it's one thing that we've noticed has grown over the years since technology has advanced. Next. So like I said earlier, this can also affect sleep. The blue light that's emitted from our screens, electronic devices, it decreases melatonin. And melatonin, again, helps us with our sleep and wake cycles. It helps us fall asleep and stay asleep. So if we don't get as much melatonin, that can mean less minutes of sleep per night. And over time, that can accumulate. Next. So the other issue is that it can affect our attention. When we see kids do homework, a lot of times there's TV in the background. When we're working, sometimes we have phones next to us, and that can distract us from work and kind of help prevent us from getting our tasks done. So that can lead to less decreased school and work performance because of that, and we're less productive, and it takes longer to finish the things that we need to do. Next. So it's also linked to depression. So studies have shown a U-shaped relationship between the amount of media we use and depression. So in other words, if you use very little amount of screen time, or you use a lot of screen time, that can lead to some depression as well. Next. So myopia and dry eyes. So myopia, in other words, nearsightedness and dry eyes, we've seen a lot of kids over the last few years in particular have more and more of them are needing glasses, and more of them are starting to get more dry eyes, which can be particularly painful. So with myopia, with screen time, the problem is that our eyes are straining when we're looking at screens. So because of that, that can increase the risk of getting nearsightedness. So with dry eyes, when we're on screens, we're not blinking as much. And when we don't blink as much, we don't moisturize our eyes as much. So that leads to the dry eyes. And the last point. So this is a particularly important point, particularly for the kids less than 5 years old. So that's a crucial time period for them to develop their cognitive, language, and social and emotional development. So, if you have a child less than 5 years old, just kind of keep in mind of how much you're on your phone or watching TV when you're with them, because that can be a time when you could potentially miss them developing well. Next slide. All right, so what can we do as parents? So limiting screen time is the big thing, and it's actually been shown to increase and improve our well-being when we do so. So like I mentioned before, no screens 1 hour before bed. For kids less than 2 years old, you want to avoid screen time altogether. Now, if you want to introduce some screen time for kids 18 to 24 months, you can. The recommendation is that you use, high quality educational programming. So Sesame Street, for an example. For kids that are 2 to 5 years old, 1 hour screen time per day should be the max. And if it's greater than 5 years old, then 2 hours of screen time should be the max amount of time. Next. So we found that 30% of kids 0 to 3 years old actually have a TV in their bedroom. So you want to get rid of that. Move it to another room if you have to. TV in the bedroom has actually been linked to obesity and depression. So you want to try to make sure that there's no TV in any of the bedrooms. Next. So instead of screen time, you want to try to find ways to do some other activities. So for instance, we need about 1 hour physical activity every day. So that could be something you can do as a family. So you can also play sports, play some board games, read together, meet up with friends and family when you can, things like that. So those are some ways to do other activities instead of the screen time. And finally, creating a family plan. So just like other lifestyle habits, I find it can be very difficult to do it yourself. So you want to try to do it with your family. So that can help boost encouragement with everyone. So some examples can be when you're spending time with your child, make sure you put your phone on Do Not Disturb. You can set media-free times like dinner time, family time. And if your child is watching TV, it'd be a good time to kind of watch TV with them. So the healthychildren.org link that you see there is a pretty helpful tool, and it helps you kind of outline as a family what you would like to do. So you can set screen-free zones and times, device curfew, choose and diversify media, and then balance offline and online time. So this can be a printout that you put on your fridge and kind of enforce with your entire family so everyone kind of follows the same plan. Next. And finally, the 20-20-20 rule. So this is to help with decreasing nearsightedness and dry eyes. So the recommendation is, so for every 20 minutes that you're looking on a screen, look away for 20 seconds at an object about 20 feet away. So keep that in mind when you're looking at your computers. Next. All right, so I'm going to touch a little bit about stress and anxiety. I'm sure a lot of us have been going through this, especially with the pandemic going on. We're not able to do a lot of things that we used to do. There's been a lot of changes with our children and changes with work and being able to work remotely for a lot of us. So I'll talk a little bit about it. So stress, so it is a normal response. We need a little bit of stress in our life to be able to combat fear and to be able to get some things done. It should usually be a relatively short duration, and it should resolve spontaneously over time with some support or changes to your environment. So some common stressors that are pretty normal, starting school, new job, graduation, new babies. It's very common to have stress after this, and it's a normal expected response to these changes. And of course, the pandemic, which I kind of talked about. And also, so this chart kind of tells you a little bit about the normal fears that children may have that can cause them stress. So these are age appropriate kind of fears that you may expect. So infants and toddlers may be scared of strangers, separating from their parents, same with preschoolers, they'd be afraid of monsters, ghosts, things like that. All right, so the physiology of anxiety. So basically what happens in our bodies when we have some stress or some sort of danger or fear that comes our way, our body starts doing this fight and flight response. And what happens is hormones and chemicals in our bodies are secreted to prepare us to tackle that stress. And our brain takes that fear and just kind of modifies that response. So over time, if this fear is kind of heightened and the stress is prolonged, it can cause a lot of symptoms like irritability, muscle aches, general pain, poor sleep, difficulty concentrating. Some people have things like chest pain and palpitations. And for children, when they have stress over time, you'll see that it's more of a behavioral change. So they'll tend to have more temper tantrums, aggression, and probably more crying as well. Next slide. So what are some ways that we can tackle stress and anxiety? So basically the things that Chrissy and I have talked about so far. So sleep hygiene, eating healthy, regular exercise, doing regular routines are all very important. Social support is also important. It can help combat depression too. So being able to keep in touch with our friends and family, having conversations every now and then is helpful. Meditation is also helpful, and Christy will kind of go over that in a little bit as well. So I kind of believe, mind, body, and spirit all go together. So if we neglect any part of that, and if we neglect any part of those, then it could affect the other aspects of our health and can lead to potential health detriments. So you also want to avoid recreational drugs and alcohol as well. Now, if you feel like your stress and anxiety is becoming overwhelming, it's affecting your life, it's affecting work, school, things like that, then I'd recommend that you talk to your physician or a counselor. And a lot of times they'll recommend what's called cognitive behavioral therapy. And that kind of helps. They'll kind of go over your stressors and help you reframe your thoughts and teach you some better coping strategies. So, all right, and I'll turn it over to Christy.
Well, I'm curious if any of you have heard of mindfulness before. So can like raise your invisible hand if you had. But mindfulness is a means by maintaining a moment by moment awareness of your thoughts, feelings, bodily sensations, surrounding environment through a gentle, nurturing lens. And it's not uncommon for people to confuse mindfulness and meditation. But what we find is that meditation is just one powerful piece of mindfulness, but it's not the entire thing. So mindfulness, we also see involves acceptance, meaning that we're paying attention to those thoughts that are rolling around our minds, and then we're having some control over them. So they don't feel as out of control, and that can produce anxiety and some of the symptoms of depression. So I have a couple of reminders for us when we think about mindfulness. So it's important to explore different techniques. There's so many different types of theories out there and ways that you can practice mindfulness. It might be a walking meditation. It could be just focusing on your kids at that moment at this time so that it's more of this presence awareness. A lot of our stress comes from thinking about the future or the past. And if you ever stop to just think about what you're thinking, a lot of our kind of emotions typically go in either direction. So there's a lot out there, and I put a link down at the bottom that's from Headspace that looks at different techniques for meditation and also mindfulness. Another important consideration is being curious. So mindfulness has this wrap, right, that you're sitting on the floor and you're meditating, but it's really nice to be curious about how it's affecting you, how you feel when you're trying to do a meditation or a mindfulness act, and what kind of feelings come up. So there's always this thought in yoga that there's no bad emotions, but just being curious about why you're feeling scared or angry or frustrated or stressed, and kind of figuring out that maybe you can't fix it at this moment, but being okay with some of those not so great feelings at this time. Have patience and trust for the process. A lot of people go into mindfulness expecting results immediately and expecting certain results. So kind of going into it in this open-minded manner can be really helpful for people to explore. Finding resources, again, there's a lot of great ones on positive psychology. I thought I put that link at the bottom too, but I think that was on a different version. So positive psychology is a great one around mindfulness. There's also mindfulness.com that you can also go and get some really great resources around the pandemic and other parenting type resources, so to speak. Mindfulness, it's important to start setting a schedule, and you can even do this with kids and practice little bits of mindfulness with them. They're probably not going to sit down for a 10-minute meditation with you, but there might be some ways that you can really focus on cooking, for example, or doing certain tasks that you normally would just kind of mindlessly go through. And our last one is almost the most important that I alluded to, but observing outcomes from your mindfulness practice without that expectation of curing your anxiety or curing your depression, because ultimately we don't know what each individual person will get out of mindfulness. It might not help you at all, but maybe then explore different techniques for it. if you're not feeling immediately stress-free, maybe there's other things that we need to do in our life around that. So some other resources that you can get on your phone as like an app, these are just a few. There's hundreds out there. I really have been enjoying Insight Timer and 10% Happier. 10% Happier is also a podcast, and it has really great research on mindfulness and meditation techniques to excite you about it if you need some of that inspiration. Most of these apps also have guided meditations with it. There's also Headspace I didn't add on here. And most of them are free. So you can take advantage of some of the resources without a subscription. Like Calm, you'd probably have to pay for, but Insight Timer has a free version. Stop, Breathe, and Think. There's also one called Shut Up Brain that I've listened to before. So lots of good resources for you to get started and finding out what would work for you. All right, we can open it up for questions now.
Thank you, Christy, and thank you, Dr. Chen-Milhone. That was packed with so many great resources for wide ranges of ages. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. A few questions from some attendees. What are some diet tips for growing teenagers? Do you have any?
Yeah, the best ones are just to serve what you're going to serve for your meals at home and feeling good about what you're serving, because ultimately your teen is going to be hungry. And even if they're not the happiest about what the meal, you can always add something that would fill them up, say like an extra plate of carbs for your growing teen. That's the best thing. Doing family meals has been really shown to help them. Even if they're not into healthy eating at that moment, when they come back to it in adulthood, they find that they have the skills to cook, they have the skills to plan a meal and to see what actually has been served in their family. So most people that, don't really cook in their adulthood probably didn't have much of a family gathering type situation for mealtime. So that doesn't have to be every meal, but trying to do at least one meal a day where you can gather as a family and have a nice balanced meal. So including vegetables, whether or not they eat them is up to them, but at least including it on the plate.
Perfect, thank you. I think this question is kind of, as people are kind of digesting all the information, what's more important, watching what you eat or exercising regularly? So trying to kind of take each recommendation in bite-sized portions.
Oh my goodness. I don't know if Dr. Chen-Milhone has a better answer, but they're probably equal. And it's really about what you can do right now. Some people just feel like really overwhelmed by the nutrition field, and I don't blame them. There's a lot out there on that's wrong and incorrect. So trying to find at least like one thing that would be possible for you, whether that be exercise or nutrition. And then maybe once you get one under your belt, you can start kind of doing the other one.
Yeah, I totally echo Christy there. It's so hard, and there's so many different kinds of diets and things out there. The big thing is I think the hardest part is just getting started, to be honest. And once you find one that works for you, you want to keep doing that, incorporate it into your entire lifestyle and keep it up. So that's kind of the big thing. And with exercise, it's a balancing act. So if you think about how much food you take in and the exercise, how much comes out. So it's a balancing act. So you do want to do both. And I would say that they are equal. Again, getting started is the hardest part. So finding something that you enjoy as far as exercise and keeping it up, setting a schedule and things like that, that's the most important.
And sometimes even if you start on one path, it makes you feel more motivated and more energized to do the other one. So a lot of times exercise can actually enhance our energy, and maybe we have better focus and concentration to focus on the healthy meals. So either one, and ideally both at the end.
Thank you. I think this one is for parents of children kind of older teenage age, but suggestions on encouraging healthy eating and exercise without resistance or installing any kind of negative thoughts around the two.
I like to keep food talk neutral. So trying to stay away from what's healthy or what's good for the body in concrete terms, because we know that there is room for all foods in diets. So not demonizing people for eating certain things, but in general, if you've ever seen that My Plate guideline, that's a really helpful tool to just make sure we're getting some plants on the plate at night, or during the lunch day or lunch break. And then having a source of protein and a source of whole grain carbs, ideally, or at least maybe some fruit on the side that people can enjoy. So it can be a struggle, and that's where I recommend Ellen Sater. She has a lot of good language that you can utilize with kids, even of all ages. And just, again, trying to make it more about what tastes good and encourage them to join you in the kitchen if they're not really happy with what you've been serving. Have them field and pick out recipes that would be good, get them involved. And that way it's, again, teaching them skills that they can use later in life as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Christy said. I mean, the key thing is, and I like the My Plate. It's a really good visual in terms of how much your portions should be. And doing it together as a family is so important, just like all the other lifestyle habits that we talked about, sleep and exercise too. You want to do it together as a family. It's hard to do it on your own. So, inviting your teen to, cook with you in the kitchen, and kind of getting them involved and helping them learn what could be a good diet, what's something good to eat. So like Christy said, once they are able to do that, and later on when they get into adulthood, they'll be able to take that with them.
I'll put a link for the myplate.gov site. They have diagrams, and then they do have some resources for kids and how to get them to be healthy eaters.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing that. Another question came in. What other supplements would you recommend for families that are vegetarian apart from omega-3 and vitamin D?
Those are the big ones. If you're vegan, so eating no animal products, I usually recommend a B12 supplement for people, but that you could get in a multivitamin as well. So typically, if you're eating a good variety of foods, I don't necessarily promote supplements, or they're not always needed. So it's up to your comfort. You could chat with your pediatrician about that as well, because they can kind of dive in to see what nutrients might be not there in your diet.
Yeah, there's not really very many supplements that are FDA approved, and so it's kind of hard to say, and it's pretty controversial for a lot of them. But like Christy said, if you are vegan, B12 tends to be a lower vitamin in your diet because of that. So you could just take a multivitamin, and that would be okay.
Perfect. And then I think this will be our last question. Tips on kind of managing like the parents' own stress and not passing that on to the children, especially during this time of additional stresses and anxiety during the pandemic.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I have two small kids, and there's days where it's definitely stressful and you feel like, oh gosh, everything is so overwhelming. Sometimes if you just need, everyone sometimes needs their moment, and different ways to cope. One thing you can do if you feel like, you just don't, you can't cope with it at that moment, make sure your child is in safe hands, and then you can go, to another room, cry it out, whatever you need to do to cope, and then come back. So that's one way you can do that. Yeah, it's really a tough time. And, if you also need help, sometimes reaching out to a counselor to find strategies that best work for you, that can be helpful as well.
I heard something interesting from a psychologist that did a talk with me recently. And that whole oxygen mask analogy, where put your own oxygen mask on before helping others. So that can be kind of related back to treating yourself and making sure you do have some of those self-coping mechanisms, even taking a bath, cuddling with an animal away from your family for a little bit, and having ways that you can cope is going to be really huge.
Yeah, that's so true. As a parent, you're the role model, so you show them how to cope. So learning tips and strategies, and like some of those apps and programs that Chrissy had mentioned, kind of helps you go through those things too, figuring out ways how to cope and deal with certain stressors. So I'd encourage you to try to seek those out and see what works best for you. And once you learn it well, it does take time, but once you learn it well, you can pass it on to your kids too.
Great tips. Thank you both again for joining us today. And thank you to all of our attendees for zooming in and joining us. Please visit parentmap.com/live to learn more about our upcoming virtual events. We have quite a few coming up, including Who We Are, a Chronicle of Racism in America, featuring the Who We Are Project founder, Jeffrey Robinson, and that's on February 24th. And we also have a virtual camp fair event coming up on March 27th. So thank you again, Christy and Dr. Chen-Milhone and PacMed. We appreciate you providing all of these wonderful resources, and we'll follow up with a link to the recording and also some additional resources from them as well. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Everyone, thanks for having us.